will proceed as a subcommittee.
Okay.
I'll pass it to you, Lauren.
Sure. Welcome everyone. Please forgive me. I have been in phone calls all day, so I apologize if I trip over my words. It's just the nature of virtual meetings. My name is Lauren Rosencrans. I'm the co-chair here for the pub. Just as a reminder, this is a meeting of community volunteers tasked to advise council on items related to the Water Bureau and the Bureau of Environmental Services. Under Portland City Code and state law, the Portland Utility Board is holding this meeting electronically. Board members and relevant city staff are attending remotely, electronically, or by phone, and the city has made it available for the public to listen to the audio broadcast of this meeting. The public will have an opportunity to provide comments during the public comment portion of the agenda and can also provide written testimony to the board by emailing utilityboard@portlandoregon.gov. Also, we are recording the meeting if you didn't hear the robot tell you. Pub believes and acts upon anti-racist principles in our meeting spaces and interactions with Pub. While every person has the right to share their personal perspective, we stand against wrongful conduct, particularly any conduct that is targeted toward people that are made vulnerable by systemic inequities. This means stepping up as a community when there is a wrongful conduct and fostering a space of learning and growth. By putting our principles into action, we are active and deliberate. We speak up and speak out. Each person is empowered to maintain the culture of the Portland Utility Board, and we want to focus on the impacted individual or population, condemning the conduct, not the person.
My name is Amy Archer-Masters, and I'll quickly run through the meeting guidelines. Please state your name before you speak, and if appropriate, who you're addressing or just that you're addressing the group. The chat box is only viewable by pub staff, myself, and Jonna Lynn. Please limit chats to technical and logistical issues, including signing up for public comment or asking for assistance, reminding us if you've been waiting to speak and have not been called on. The raise hand function is primarily used by the board. Co-hosts may lower your hand just to maintain the flow of conversation once you've begun speaking. During public comment periods, the public can raise their hand and will be called on when appropriate. Connecting by phone, you may need to press *9 to raise your hand. Videos may be turned on when speaking if desired. It is not required. And please mute your microphone when you're not speaking. If connecting by phone, you may need to press *6. Public comment will be taken during the comment period early in the meeting. You can sign up through chat with myself or Jonna Lynn or raise your hand during the comment period. It's also available just prior to any formal board vote after a motion has been made and seconded by board members. We'll pass it back to you, Lauren, for the end.
Thanks, Amy. It's Lauren again. Yeah, as you can see on our screen, we're planning on talking about after our public comment and review of minutes from last meeting, we're going to be discussing citywide updates, specifically leadership in the mayor's proposed budget, budget feedback for the full council. We need to discuss internal work, including stipends, recruitment, and work plan progress, followed by announcements in the next meeting before we adjourn. Okay, just a moment set aside for voting board members to disclose any communications they've had with city leadership or bureau staff regarding items that could relate to the pub's work. Any items that any pub members wish to disclose. Okay, hearing nothing, I think we can call for public. Oh, sorry, Karen. Yes, please go ahead.
Hello, Karen Williams, voting member and co-chair. It's not a disclosure, but I just want to make sure our fellow board members are aware that you and I, Lauren, had a meeting with leadership last week.
I think.
And just talked on some updates and conversations, some of which may be very well the topic of the meeting today, but I just thought I'd make sure everyone was aware that that meeting had happened.
Thanks, Karen. Yes, we did have a leadership meeting last week. And I think we do intend to discuss some of the things today. Anybody else? Kyle, I saw your hand up. Was that a mistake?
No, I attended a transit town hall and just spoke in favor of public transit and cycling and public transit. That's all, but I had nothing with the pub, and I don't even talk to any council members, but it was
Okay,
nice civil engagement. That's all.
great. Thanks for letting us know. Okay, then I'll move on to calling for public comment. This is just space for anybody from the public to leave a comment. Can use the chat box to sign up, and you'll be called by name to give comment.
I've not received anything so far, so if you're in the room, feel free to unmute and begin speaking.
I'm actually I'm just interested in learning and following up on the pub. I don't have specific public comment, but this is what I look like and this is what my voice sounds like, and I'm very interested in the work the pub does. Thank you.
Thanks.
Diane Hankels.
Diane, okay, thank you. Okay, I mean, hearing nothing, I mean, of course, if anybody has something to add, please reach out. Otherwise, we can approve minutes that were distributed for both April 1st and the 17th meetings. Does anybody have any suggested changes or corrections? Yes, Karen, please go ahead.
I do not. The minutes look fabulous, and I just wanted to say thank you to Jonalyn. It was super helpful for me in understanding what happened in the meeting I missed. So thank you for that. But I don't think we can approve them since we don't have quorum, which is a shame because they're beautiful.
It's a good call. Okay, well, good point. We can't approve them, but we can leave that for next time we have quorum, unless anybody has edits. Okay, first regular agenda items to discuss the citywide updates, especially the mayor's proposed budget released yesterday. I know I personally haven't had a chance to review them, but I'm curious if anybody or if we wanted to leave space for Bureau staff to provide any updates about the proposed budget and their impacts, if they have any, and then we can open up for questions and discussion.
This is Amy. So I am going to make a bold assumption and know that folks may have had challenge getting through content. And so we have, as staff, have tried to do a little bit of review and highlight some of the things that stood out to at least myself and Jonalyn, but there are much more brilliant folks in the room who are more closely connected to the bureaus and the decisions that have come forward. So I also just want to open the floor for the bureau directors and other finance and leadership staff in the room to please feel free to interject and add any content either that we've missed or that we've not quite captured accurately, or just to expand upon it. So I'm just going to run through quickly some of the highlights. So there is a brief press release and conversation with the mayor. It's about 28 minutes, so it's in the various links that you received. So if you're interested in hearing what the actual conversation was, that is a good kind of high level overview. There's a lot of documents. I think Lauren was, as we were getting started, was noting that, you know, the document itself is something like 377 pages. So it is a really long document. I don't expect any of you to be reading all those pages, but where relevant, if there's something specific that you want to look at more deeply, then we can look at those, either those documents or just request some supplemental information from staff as well. So at a very high level, I think the mayor has in writing and in the thing kind of voiced a back to basics approach to the budget. You know, there's a number of elements to that and values that he states, which included environmental stewardship and as well as other things dealing with houselessness and pretty broad values that I think align with those that you discuss. He also did mention that it was kind of a combination of, but not just focused on a cut mentality, looking at potential areas for revenue increases, for example, in parks and elsewhere. And so there's a number of elements, and because of course, the general fund citywide whole is pretty substantial, but there also are some items so what I'm focusing on are the more utility and rate specific pieces. So the recommendations do include realignment of existing positions. There's 2 each in each of the Transportation, Water Bureau, and BES to support the service area within the DCA and the service-wide approach. So those are budget neutral, but they just shift existing positions for that more coordinated service area approach. It also has the position ad for the utility director position, which we've discussed here and will continue to discuss as it moves forward. The proposed did include the combined rate increase at the rate that was originally in the financial plan, not at the mayor's original guidance. So which aligned with what was coming from the finance committee to the rest of council. So that's what was included. Although there are still some elements that were originally part of that cut that do still show in the budget, because there was the new requirement related to street sweeping, which was a transfer of $3.1 million from BES to transportation for street sweeping, making a connection between the water quality impacts in the areas of the city where it does have impact. And so that 3.1 million was based on some calculations related to the percentage of streets and the overall cost. I'm not 100% clear on the funding, so I'm gonna let BES staff come back to that and maybe answer some specific details related to that, because there were 2 elements. One was 2 million in revenue, and then the other was the 1.1 something million that was originally part of the potential cut package to meet the rate guidance that was requested. And so those were the elements in the decision packages. The Water Bureau packages reference the reduction in FTE. There were 2 different packages that referenced that in order to manage the increased costs of interagencies, increased labor expenses and PERS. And then there also is decorative fountains increase in interagency to pay parks for the work related to the fountains that are assets that are still owned by the Water Bureau. And Hub has had some conversations about that in prior years, so I want to make sure that it was at least referenced. The mayor did speak also to the change, or how was it phrased? Restoring the promise of the Portland Clean Energy Fund. I do not totally understand all the implications of that, so I will just leave it there. There wasn't a lot of information other than what was pretty high level covered about the original intent of PSEF and making sure that it wasn't used to fill gaps in the city budget. So there was just kind of a recommitment to that, which the pub has also spoken about previously. There are the enterprise efficiency citywide reductions. So again, this is the city's goal of achieving efficiencies in some of those potentially coordinated services like human resources and technology and finance and other core services, and a goal of a 20% reduction that would be achieved by the end of next fiscal year. So in next fiscal year's budget, that half of that would be achieved. So that is a cut of approximately 9.5 million citywide. I'm not sure how it will connect to all of the utilities, but just be aware that that is an element that will continue to be discussed. And over the next 4 months, there will be some groups convening to kind of work out the details of that. And then there was a plan to request from council a waiver of system development charges for the next 5,000 housing permits or housing units. It was not based on income. So there are existing waivers, as we've discussed, to facilitate low income housing. This is not directly connected to that. It is to stimulate just growth and expansion of housing units in Portland. And so as we've discussed previously and have included in some of the draft language that we've shared with you all, is just a little bit of the concerns that have been raised at PUB related to the impacts on the utilities because they're not paying for future investments in the system. It's paying for the debt related to past investments in the system, which since SDCs are one-time expenses, once the development happens, there's a missed opportunity to collect from those developers and instead could place burden on ratepayers. And then finally, one of the other pieces that I just wanted to note that isn't an immediate impact in this fiscal year, but there is a conversation and information in the budget document about the flood safety benefit, and which has, I believe, the one-time charges are currently being paid through general fund, and there is a desire to shift that expense onto utility ratepayers. And so a stakeholder group will be convened to work out the details and impacts of that, with the goal of it being implemented in the next budget cycle, so that by 26-27 that there would be a plan for council to consider related to that. So at a very high level, those are the pieces that I noted in my quick review of the budget document. As I mentioned, I welcome Bureau experts to add anything extra as we have this conversation. And I'll open up the floor. Kyle, go ahead.
I'll yield to Bureau, Kyle Chipman, voting member. I'll yield to Bureau members in response to your summary. And then I just have a couple of thoughts and just from all the materials read. Thank you. Okay, I will retake the floor. Feel free to interrupt or interject. Thank you, Amy, for the bullet points and the preparation. Oh, Keisha, did you want to say something? I'm sorry.
No, sorry, I just didn't realize I just realized I hit my camera thing.
You're good. You're good. Thank you. Okay. There is a lot of materials to read. I just wanted to share again for pub members that I'm still like, this is all on one big old board, like Miro board I'm keeping up. So I can share the link to Jonah or Amy if they want to distribute that right now. Like literally all of these different resources I'm just looking at on my screen, or I can follow up in an email afterwards. It's just, especially for the volume of content, it's just helpful to see it all in one spot. So I don't know, I can send that to Jonah if you're even able to distribute for this call. I'm just to speak on all of the content. I would first, I would be very interested in, let me double check the agenda. Yeah, dialing in and maybe extending into how we can become activated, or how our involvement and engagement is actionable. Because it's a lot of content, but where we can. May 7th, there's the I had the timeline. May 7th, there is a utility rate review, which is you've prepared basically speaking points for someone to address our shared points, and then also the May 14th budget committee work session. I'm not totally sure what that means, but just kind of orienting us to what these how these pieces can flow. I think overall, the most shocking element to read was the asset management breakdown. That was startling, that the absence of the ability to prioritize and kind of create an aggregate view of where needs are and are not in the city, and also the amount of staff and time invested to implement that kind of system, and an additional price tag. That's just something that really jumped out, that I don't know if it's appropriate to discuss during this session, but it's kind of where I've been going with this, like, how do we create a holistic view of prioritization? The fact that it's absent at the city level. And also, if for those who work in the city, if there are other known absences that cause just an inability to make effective decisions, especially long-term investment. If we only have this much, how do we make that count right here, right now, so that we don't accrue greater costs? And even that was when I spoke at the transit town hall, that was one of my major points as well. Like, I'm willing to accept a reduction in service, to invest now, to forego increased cost later, but with the absence of any kind of visibility, how do we even do that? The final point I want to raise for people's, the mayor's message I thought was helpful, but it was my budget message was like a lot of vision-based stuff, which was like made me feel good, but also I'm not totally sure where those hard costs are. So some of your breakdown was helpful, Amy, and I'm just gonna, as best I can, go through the budget and understand it. And finally, on page 23 of the budget, we as the pub are called out as a line item, or like an individual component between budget website and direct public testimony. So there is awareness and a call out of us as an entity within this larger budget flow. So those are my kind of general points. I don't know if anybody wants to, or I give the floor to Lorraine.
Thanks, Kyle. Lorraine, go ahead.
Thank you, Kyle. I don't know if Ting has their hands up to respond to Kyle or not.
Yeah, I can go later. So just
Okay.
going to the bureau. Yeah, thanks, Lauren.
Okay, no problem. So, I think the overall view of the budget is that it's just huge, lots of stuff. So I'm gonna go down this list here, things that jumped out at me. PWB reduction of 18 FTE for increased costs of interagency labor and PERS. So basically, if my understanding is correct, is if labor cost goes up and PERS cost goes up, I don't know what cost of interagency is. The solution to that is to cut positions. So is that correct, or is that a misunderstanding? The SDC charges, the waiver of the SDC charges, and correct me if I'm wrong, the initial discussion was that that was going to be specifically to ensure that we increase the volume of low-income housing. Now I'm seeing that it's not income-based, and I think we have adequate evidence in Portland that not every rental property or rental building that is built in Portland accommodates low income. We have a lot of white elephants in some cases where their current occupancy rate is very low. However, so that is concerning to me that we are going to be given a waiver to 5,000 housing permits. And I'm also going to make another assumption on top of that, is that low-income housing takes a little longer to get off the ground because they have to get funding, they have to put together things other than private developers. So that is concerning to me. And there was one other thing, and Portland, I don't remember it right now, but I just wanted to raise those points based on these points that Amy, that you put together. Thanks so much.
Lorraine, if I can respond just at least to the first, I hear your concerns about the second and third topic, so we've noted that. And I think it aligns with some of what we've heard in from you and others in prior meetings. Regarding the first piece about FTE reduction, so when costs go up related to labor or PERS, then there are couple options. Some is to increase your resources, your rates, and to fund that increase in resources because the rates were limited to what had been planned previously and costs have gone up more substantially than was previously projected, then that constrains the opportunity to absorb those expenses through increases in revenue or rates. So there are a number of elements, some of which we've talked in this meeting. So the interagency and other overhead and other expenses, some of those costs are internal services like human resources and technology and facilities. I think facilities and fleet are some large ones that increased more significantly than just inflationary rates, as well as new expenses like the staffing for council and the restructure of during transition and the new offices. So there are some unanticipated expenses that all the bureaus, have had to absorb either through general fund or within existing rates. So the rate that the bureaus were requesting, again, did not include those additional costs. So since they were limited in the rate that they could increase, the only way to look is to identify where there could be cuts. The majority of the cuts have attempted to focus on vacancies that existed within the bureaus. Citywide, I think that is true. There is a goal to limit layoffs, but there are some pretty substantial staffing cuts that are required to achieve the level of cuts citywide.
Thanks, Amy. It's just that I want to reemphasize that when cuts need to happen, it seems to be the go-to thing. It seems to be there is no creativity in coming up with it, and it impacts people. It in fact impacts families, and there are a lot of instances where there are certain levels of staffing refuse to bear the load. And I'm being very PC here. Other than to cut people who are directly involved in service, in the service, and doing the work at the city. Okay? And we have seen a number of articles in the not too recent past about one particular senior person at the city who have gotten a certain amount of increases in their salary. Okay, so I just wanted to be very clear on that. In when I see FTEs being cut, whether it's vacancies or not, if there are vacancies, then that means that the workload goes to other people. The work doesn't go away. The workload goes to others. So yes, we may be cutting vacancies that doesn't impact a particular person at that particular point in time, but the workload goes to others. So the staff that remains end up doubling up or tripling up or quadrupling up to get stuff done that has to be done. And I just wanted to be clear about that as we move forward, that we very be conscious of how this is the least creative way of coming up with cuts.
Thanks, Lorraine. Ting, I think you had your hand up next.
Yeah, thank you so much, Amy, for putting this together. I just want to add some context about the BES side. Just like you said, it's, everything is going up, the pricing and cost with the interagency agreement, labor, purse and everything. So you may wondering the PWB, there is a reduction, and also what is the BES strategy? I just want to say we are facing the same drivers and that cost reduction. So BES strategy has been a little bit different from Water Bureau, that we are looking to several ways to achieve this balanced budget for the reduction. So you all have probably heard some of this in the past with regarding to reducing external materials and services, along with the decrease, set aside some of the reserves for future liabilities and work that we need to focus on, and also defer some of the CIP investment, so that in order to balance the budget need for right now, along with we are looking to more repurposing different part of the vacancies to really addressing the priority portfolios for treatment plant and pumping stations, which does make lead to impact to other portfolios, and there is additional impact too. I really appreciate Lauren's comment about the impact here, but also letting the members know we are making some conscious, intentional trade-offs and choices to work through this. We are in active discussion with DC Donna Paul. She's very well aware of the impact and challenges. I know she's also elevating and supporting and telling the story for the Infrastructure Bureau here too.
Thank you, Ting. Appreciate your input. Kyle, go ahead.
Thank you. Kyle Chipman, voting member. I have I feel like I've just said points out loud without giving time for direct response. I have two points I want to flag, but I actually will ask a question directly to Director Ting and Director Quisha, if possible. The first, I guess, and then I'll actually questions directly to the directors. And then the point I want to raise that was concerning is in the message from the mayor or in an abstract in the budget, it was flagged that basically all one-time possible budget kind of avenues to help ameliorate the gap this year have been exhausted. And so we're facing an even more challenging 26 to 27. I'm just curious if that is read correctly, that the challenges we face this year are even compounded next year because we've exhausted all possible one-time avenues. My question actually for Ting and Quisha, again, just going back to, it was from Audit Services Director Casey Jones on April 23rd. It was a detailed summary on the absence of asset management citywide. Is that on your radar? Did you read that summary? Do each of you and your teams manage your own kind of program or portfolio, like your own asset management? Is there a pathway to integrate? If you've read it, what is your response? And if not, what are your strategies, either within your bureaus or in citywide coordination? Thank you.
Yeah, I can start, and then for Quisha to chime in as well. From my perspective, I do think it's a challenging financial situation for the city and for the bureaus too. But we are looking to at the city level, there's a lot of the effort in order to improve efficiency and cost savings. So there are additional effort that look into that. So I'm not sure, where we are from next year compared with this year. That's something maybe the additional finance team members know about more, but I just want to recognize there are a lot of effort looking to the cost savings, efficiency gains has already started. And regarding your second question on asset management, Kyle, I didn't read directly that what you're describing, but this is something that city has a CAMG group that has been coordinating related to overall asset management efforts. Within our bureau, BES, we do have folks focusing on asset management because, we don't have enough budget and the utility will never have enough budget to address everything that we need to address at one time. So asset management is really a foundation, and we are taking a risk-based approach to prioritize the CIP project. So this has been an effort that there has been additional discussion among the service area levels that I know DC Donna Paul is tracking this too. How do we bring that asset management into more at the service area level and city level? So my hope is that this will be serving as a foundation. We'll look into how that looks like, but it serves as a foundation to prioritize our project.
Thank you.
I mean, I'll just add that, yes, I think within our own bureaus, we do have asset management happening, right? And we're constantly prioritizing, trying to come up with the right criteria that's going to help us make the best decisions and prioritize the work accordingly. And, at a city level right now, no, that doesn't exist across everything, but it is part of what is being built. As Ting mentioned, within the water utilities, we have the unified CIP work and other things that's happening. There is a goal around that. What I always say is that those auditor reports help highlight things that we know exist. We know that there needs to be better coordination. We know all of those. There needs to be better funding. There needs to be. I live by a model that just for me has over the years really helped keep me focused on those core things. And it's it's run, grow, transform. And the run work you do is 60 to 70% of what you do because it holds those critical assets, the critical infrastructure. And I think we are really trying to focus on those critical assets. And I know water has really been over the years building up our asset management. We've developed strong frameworks for how we do that, and we've embedded equity into that thinking. So this is why we have the reality in our work that we replace so much main and so much pipe every year. We do that. We have a system because we can't afford to let the backlog grow because that is critical to us delivering on our core services. So you're right. I think that report was I haven't read it in detail. I did go through some of it, but it is what we know. There's much that needs to be done, and there's billions of dollars of assets, and we are very aware of that. And I think within Water and BES, we're doing the asset management work, and now we have to bring together that more integrated planning around all of that. And so probably not the most satisfying answer to give to your question, but it is where we are.
Thank you both for your responses. And I in my heart, even without technical knowledge, I knew that there was asset management occurring at the bureau level. It was shocking to read the auditor's summary with the recommendation of the implications and the cost of the absence. So thank you both for your responses. Thank you.
I appreciate that discussion. Thanks. Julia.
I just want to second pretty much everything Kyle has been saying and all the questions he's asking, just because I also agree that it's really hard to make informed decisions when you don't have the information that you need. And of course, it's better going into a financial crisis with those systems already in place because it's expensive to create them and get all that information. So it's challenging that we finally have a system that's trying to de-silo the bureaus while we're in a budget crisis. It's a really unfortunate combination of things. But I wanted to uplift part of what I think Lorraine was trying to say. And I'll just be a little more blunt about it in terms of, actually saying, that 18 FTE, you've let go of 18 FTE for labor and PERS purposes really sends a message that, fighting for the best bargain possible, is not going to be good for workers. And that's just really, it's a tough pill to swallow. Because in the past, the pub has been really supportive of public workers, and I think it's really concerning to see labor costs, kind of on the list of reasons why layoffs needed to happen. In a world where I do understand things are getting more expensive, I fully understand that. But it's that the way that it's written really does make it seem like on some level workers are penalized for fighting for a good contract and for having a generous retirement plan that they didn't, PERS is not, that predates them. So anyway, it's more of a comment, although, Lorraine did phrase it as a question, is that actually, an accurate description of what's happening here? Is there, because it does genuinely feel like workers are, it's decentivizing to fighting for a strong contract when people get laid off because labor is too expensive. Anyway, I just think I understand we're in a tough spot, but that's a really tough one.
Thanks, Julia. Yeah, while labor is expensive, so is hiring and training a new workforce, right? So I think it's always important to focus on attrition when you can.
And just for clarity, I think Lorraine acknowledged this, like even if there are vacancies, that there's still a loss and an impact to workforce. Just in response to your statement, Julia, as I understand it, for these positions, there are not layoffs. These are vacancies. And they then need to repurpose and reorganize the remaining work for the staff that are on staff. But the position cuts that were, at least as of the last time that we had the conversations, they had been holding vacant specifically to be able to make the reductions without the loss of the internal expertise and the staff that they've hired.
That is an important distinction. I apologize for that implication that people were laid off. I apologize for that. But I also have worked quite a bit with folks in the public sector and know that often an unfilled position is not necessarily an unimportant position. I know there were a number, it's not easy to staff up. It takes time to find the right person who's the right fit. But anyway, I just think but anyway, yeah, that is an important distinction that they were not layoffs. So I apologize for that mischaracterization.
Thanks, Julia. Yeah, but still an impact. So worth discussing. Karen, yeah, go ahead.
So I'm trying to understand if we really gained anything with what I do see is a victory, which is having the 6.33% combined rate increase as we recommended to the Finance Committee. And after that victory, we are now looking at a 20% cut I understand sort of, well, I don't fully understand, but as I've read, I understand what I read, not all in this next fiscal year's budget, but over a couple fiscal years, cuts of 20% in services, in core services. I think that was how it was called. So I'm trying to understand. I mean, thank goodness we got the full. Well, we haven't gotten anything yet, but I mean, thank goodness, at least the mayor is recommending the full recommended rate increase. But you know, it still seems like we're pretty far behind what is really needed to again address what we have been talking about quite a lot in the last many meetings, which is the deferred maintenance and the backlog of maintenance. And so anyway, I don't quite understand where we are and on that scale, but perhaps you know, a question, it's a very particular question, is are we still in BES looking at deferring, I'm trying to remember, I think it was like $20 million of over 5 years, I think, but $20 million of projects we were going to defer to save $1.5 million, I think, in bond payment costs. So are we still facing that? Is that still necessary, I guess, for the bureaus to meet this now mayor's proposed budget?
Thanks, Karen. Yeah, I would, I'll leave some space for the Bureau leadership to respond before moving on to the other raised hands.
Yeah, go ahead, Director Liu.
Yeah, thank you, Karen. We are still at the moment is looking to that as one of the strategies to meeting the budget need. However, with the 5-year CIP program, so there is like this fluent prioritization that we can bring urgent project moving forward and defer things that is less urgent there. And we are looking at this every year to reprioritize and making sure we address the need. So there we'll definitely keep that in mind and looking to the prioritization and also looking to the next year's outlook and to forecast what are the CIP needs. So it's like a rolling moving part. So as we're finished project, and some of the project got delays for various reasons too. So there's also a little bit buffer to moving the project forward as well. If that hope that helped answer your question.
Well, I think, sure. I mean, I think the answer is yes. I mean, Director Liu, that yes, that deferred maintenance, perhaps for various reasons, is still, I guess, on the table to reduce spending, to reduce costs, to save money. That's still on the table. And I want to understand other folks have questions, but I do have maybe another question that I'll ask after Lorraine and Kyle go.
I'd say, yeah, I yield the floor to you, Karen. Please continue.
No, it's kind of separate. It's a separate question.
Great. My question builds off of yours, which is also in the summary of the pursuit to suspend SDCs or development fees for housing construction. That feels like even in the council meeting that Julie and I attended, when we voiced, you know, not holding down rates in order to fulfill investments, that this is another big chunk of just revenue that gets lost. And that's why diving into the budget, where does it feels like people get lost or maintenance gets lost. And it also feels like there's a lot of political capital because of alignment, and you know, first big push by the mayor, alignment with the governor. Even there was an appetite on city council. This feels like it's got a lot of political momentum. So diving into really understand, then cost has to be incurred somewhere. So similar concern with Karen from an additional perspective. And this is a tough situation too. Like that, this is I get stressed out in these meetings and my face shows it. So thank you.
Okay, thanks, Kyle. Excuse me. If there's no other input from directors, I'll go ahead and go ahead, Lorraine.
Yeah, it's kind of like off of Kyle's question about SDCs. As I was looking at it again, is there a dollar amount what 5,000 hour housing permits gonna look like in dollars and cents that we give up? Because I'm curious to know what that number is, because, and correct me again if I'm wrong, doesn't some of the SDC funds goes towards some of that? No, I think SDC can only build new things. I'm trying to remember my employment days at the city. I don't remember.
Yeah,
But
Lorraine, I
any-
think because you were at Parks, the SDCs there are very limited to building new things. The
New
SDCs at the utilities are actually paying debt for the expanded service that they've already had to implement in order to have the capacity for the increase in housing units, the planned
Thanks so much.
increase.
You understood clearly where my brain was locked in. So this is what I'm trying to determine, because it requires us to waive 5,000 housing permits. And I would really be interested in knowing what does that dollar amount look like, so that we can juxtapose it against what we are deferring in maintenance and have no money to do on an ongoing basis. That's where I'm going with this, because I'm really, as I'm sitting here, I'm like, what does 5,000 housing permits mean in dollars and cents? And we are here looking for money, scraping for money, and we just decide, oh, we're gonna give 500 housing permits and SDC's waiver, and it's not even deliberate and directed at low income houses, which is one of the things the mayor ran on, is houselessness. And I am thinking at the end of this waiver, when we delve into the data, it could possibly, probably, and almost certainly show that it benefited big bucks developers. So that's what I would like to know.
Amy, is that something you can answer, or I can yield to one of the directors?
Yeah, I'll yield to Director Liu if they have some details. And I know Farshad had to leave, but Cecilia is in the room for water. And I believe Ken and Anthony might have some financial details that they may be able to share as well if Director Liu doesn't have.
Yeah, I really appreciate the question here. We are developing additional details and impact as the legislation develops here, that we can definitely share more as we understand the impact and how we can approach this too.
Cecilia, did you have something to add from water's perspective, or kind of the same point that more information will come later?
Yeah, I was just going to mention that, yeah, that work is underway as far as doing the analysis on the impact of what we can anticipate the foregone SDCs would be. I do want to mention that certainly after the fact, we know how much was waived. And then, of course, some of that is, I would say, not necessarily foregone revenue that would actually happen if the legislation doesn't happen, right? So part of it is incentivizing the development. So if it doesn't, if there isn't the proposal to waive SDCs for, increasing housing unit to be built, some of them would not be happening, right? So as far as the actual foregone revenue, it's really, it would be some assumptions that we'll be applying, and that's part of why the analysis is underway is really projecting what we can expect. And that's only a projection because the reality is we don't really know, right? Until after the fact. And even after the fact, unless you didn't do it, you can then really know how much housing unit was developed and how much you would have foregone. If you put the legislation in place, it's really hard to say how much would have been done versus what actually was waived, because you know, the whole idea of the program is to incentivize the development. So I just want to sort of throw that out, that there isn't a perfect analysis to this sort of, you know, costing of what the foregone SDC would be.
Go ahead, Karen.
Yeah, Karen Williams, voting member. Exactly, right? We don't. Thank you, Cecilia, for framing that. I would just offer perhaps a place where we could start, just we pub members, and sort of getting our head around this is, I think it was in the OPB article. It was one of the links I followed in the information Amy and John Lynn sent out about I think it was the OPB article, maybe about the mayor's budget, saying that it included the waiver of SDCs. But in any case, I remember reading somewhere, yeah, I think it was the press release that, you know, the governor's target and hence the mayor's target is 5,000 new houses a year or something like that, or housing units, I should say. Or anyway, I don't know what it is, but the number 5,006 in my head. Or maybe it was 50,000. Anyway, it was a big number, and the amount of housing units that was built last year was 500, I believe. I could be.
It's specifically, I can cite it. It's forego any fees on new housing development in Portland over 3 years or 5,000 housing permits, whichever comes first. And that last year it was 500. So those are correct.
Thank you,
Karen.
okay.
Yes.
So it seems like a good guesstimate is we're foregoing at least, likely, SDCs from 500, because 500 would have been built anyway, presumably 500 that are not low income housing, affordable housing, that already have SDCs waived, I would say, for more justified reasons. So just ballpark, that's something we pub members might want to use in sort of our thinking about how much, you know, how much revenue, to your point, Kyle. I mean, this is revenue. And when you're in a place of laying people off or, you know, dispensing with vacant positions, why would you, it's just the logic of foregoing revenue seems so counterintuitive. Why would you do that? I mean, I know why, because there's a target and it is a political target to build housing. So I really know the answer to that question. I guess I just don't like it. Anyway, SDCs, 500 housing units might be a ballpark that we could use for calculating how much money are we really giving up. Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Karen. Lorraine.
Lorraine Wilson, voting member. One last thing. Flood safety benefit fee change from general fund to utility bill by financial year 26-27. Someone mentioned something about a committee coming together to discuss this. And I'm curious to know, or wondering, what role would PUB have in that committee or group that's coming together, since it says utility bill, which is in our wheelhouse. That was the other question that I had. It just came to the front of my head again.
Amy, I don't know if you have the answer to that. Or if that just
I
takes more day.
don't. I mean, I was trying to pull up from the actual budget note itself, because of course this is something that will be considered in a future year. So this year that it's usually noted as an intention and identify if there's council support for that. And then if there is council support and it moves forward, then it would be a budget note that then directs the staff that are relevant to work on a plan for that. And in the document itself, the amount for 25-26 is 5.3 million. So that's being paid as a one-time expense from general fund overhead. And with an expectation that the fee would be incorporated in the bill in an amount to cover it in an ongoing basis beginning that next fiscal year, 26-27. So the chief financial officer is supposed to convene the group. So it's supposed to include the Water Bureau, Environmental Services, Revenue Division, City Attorney, and other city stakeholders. So with a goal of having it be considered by the Finance Committee by October 15th. Before the budget development cycle. So at a minimum, PUB will be engaged because you're engaged in the budget cycle for 26-27 development, and that's where it would be moving forward. If that stakeholder group is convening, then perhaps there is something to advocate for there if you want to try to have a voice in kind of coming up with the allocation methodology and implementation plan, because that will be the focus of that group. So, and I suspect at a bare minimum, because the two bureaus that you oversee will be engaging in that their leadership will be engaging with you outside of that group as well. But depending on how fast that moves, it may be informing, not engaging. It kind of depends on how the process moves forward, and that will be driven by the CFO, Jonas. Kyle.
Thanks, Amy. Yeah, go ahead, Kyle.
Yes, Kyle Chipman, voting member. We are just as a time check, we're closing in on PUB internal work, but also to really keep it an actionable thread to the conversation. I'd love to start to get into opportunities for either public comment or how we want to start showing up in this process. And I have a larger question, which I really just in like a sentence or two, for those who've gone through this budget decision-making process before, is it like orderly, everybody has a say, or it's like super chaotic and everyone's kind of high emotions trying to slam together right toward the end? And does the extenuating nature of this year's budget and this budgetary crisis amplify those past precedents? And then I have one statement after, but that's an open question.
I would venture to say yes to all of the above. It's
emotional, like high emotions.
Yeah,
emotions.
So it's complicated, right? I mean, we have a whole new council, and so they're also orienting to the whole citywide picture, and the citywide picture is very complex. So, we think that the rates and utilities are complex enough to understand, and they're kind of broaching a bigger challenge in the citywide context. So there's a lot of moving parts and mix of priorities from the different council members. So I don't know, because we've never seen a budget process go through, and the process itself looks a little bit different. Specific to kind of your point earlier about opportunities and next steps, the immediate step is tomorrow's rate hearing, which will take place before council. So this year that looks different because you've already given testimony to the committee, which is where from the full council, at least from the direction from the president of council, is that they like the public input and the conversation, the policy conversation taking place at committee, so that when it's coming to council, a lot of those issues have been kind of already thought through and addressed. Now there's new information, and it's just, came out yesterday, and the hearing is tomorrow. There will be other opportunities for conversation about rates. The Transportation and Infrastructure Committee has a work session on public works next Monday, the 12th. and then the full council on the 15th. Now, work sessions don't have the same opportunity for public input. They're an active work session between the bureaus and council. But that's where information is presented. They're responding to questions. You can see what is coming forward from at least the policy direction from individual council members. So tomorrow is the next immediate opportunity, and then I'm not sure what the next one would be. It may be, the next two happen before your next pub meeting. So if there were to be any opportunity, it likely would need to be either writing or phone calls to individual council members if that's the desire, or additional written document in perhaps following those work sessions where you might get a little bit more information about some of the specific details of the impacts of some of these elements. But the first piece is making sure that whatever the most important elements, particularly anything that's new that came from this related to the new funding for street sweeping, because that has impacts to the Bureau and finances, as well as the SDCs and the reorganization, the additional 20%. Those are kind of the biggest key elements that are new components that if there's something you want to speak to about that, we want to try to identify what the focus would be.
Okay, I'll make my quick statement and then yield to Julia. My quick statement is in where was it? Mayor's message and public hearing on city budget. There was an embedded submission form. That's a smart sheet form. I'm like as bad a dude in this city as there is. I'm pretty confident in that specific platform. So if the city needs help or if the mayor needs help to actually put this stuff into action, like I'm happy to help as an individual. That's all. I always say it, but I know what that is and I can support in that direct way.
Thanks, Kyle. Julia?
I was just going to answer a little bit the question that Amy just answered that Kyle asked about, like, what is the process normally like? And I will just say that, like, I think under the new system of government that we're transitioning into, like, we haven't had a normal in a while. You know what I mean? The last time was rushed and not overly transparent, and we were very frustrated because it felt just kind of like we were informed about what was happening, not engaged. I would say this time around, there's a much higher level of communication around the budget and we know what's going on more. We could have a conversation about how influential we're being with it, but I actually think, the rate, we lobbied on the rates, I think like there's been, but yeah, Mitch, Commissioner, our city councilor, Mitch Greenlick, expressed why he thought it would be okay to waive these fees for building new buildings because of how big the housing crisis is. And that's the person who lobbied so strongly for taking our advice and increasing the rates. So I think that we're in the city leadership is really going to have to make a lot of very uncomfortable and difficult choices in this really, really fraught time. Was going to be fraught no matter what. But when you're also trying to transition to a new form of government and what is essentially a budget crisis, while there's also a housing crisis, it's a lot. They're trying to weigh a lot of different challenges. So I would, and I hate saying it, but like, especially with the federal government in the situation that it's in, I do feel like we are in a place that norms do not apply and maybe haven't for a while, but I feel like this is going to be very different. And it already is very different. This process feels very different than it has the last time.
Thanks, Julia. Appreciate that. Looking forward to it, seeing how it goes. Okay, thanks everyone for your discussion. If we, I think it would behoove us to kind of segue from that into tomorrow's rate hearing, just to finalize those talking points. And it looks like we can provide verbal and or written testimony, correct, Amy?
Correct. I don't know who, if anybody is available yet for tomorrow. So unfortunately, the timing is abstract. You know, as Jonalyn sent in the communication to you all, the work session or the council session is from 9:30 to 12:30. And the utility rate review is one piece. It kind of towards the middle to end of that. And in combination with many other fees that are going forward. So like Julia and Kyle experienced at the Finance Committee, they're all being heard and together, which means that the public input for all of them will also be together. So if there are people who are interested in providing verbal testimony, then we need to make sure that we get folks signed up, particularly if there's several of you and testimony could line up so that it's connected to one another. We can try to get that sign up to happen, but it also is challenging because it's a work day and we don't know when it's going to happen. I mean, my assumption is later in that time frame because there's a lot on the agenda, but you know, until the meeting starts and we track it as it moves forward, there's nobody who can give a sense of when that would be. There is no presentation from the bureaus. There is no invited testimony. So it is just signing up as members of the public to provide testimony during that. There also then are afternoon work sessions or message from the mayor and hearing on the city budget. So the afternoon will also be budget focused, but my understanding is that the best time if pub were to testify is during that morning rate session. You can submit written, so we can take what we've created as verbal and just submit it as you know, something in writing so that it can be received and reviewed in advance. Again, I would just need to know like how we would need to pretty quickly overnight incorporate any additional elements based on the new information. The one piece that I don't have a lot of information on, and I apologize if it was already covered during the meeting today, because I know we don't have very much time, is the impact of the 3.1 million for the street sweeping and how that is managed within the Bureau. So I don't have much detail on that. I don't know if there's anything that PUB would want to say in response to that. It's challenging for me to guess without fully understanding where those revenues are coming from and how it impacts the work.
Thanks, Amy. My immediate thought is, you know, we can talk about potential people signing up tomorrow. I personally could, if needed, if we feel really strongly about providing more testimony. It is in the middle of the workday, so it would be tough, as I'm sure Kyle and Julia experienced. So I would be willing to if we feel pretty strongly about it. My immediate thought was kind of to Karen's point of, you know, it's not a full victory yet, but what they are recommending based on what we said. So I think if, you know, kind of given the already chaotic nature of it, the main thing we should focus on at this point is requesting that point of contact so that we are not having to add, you know, a million things overnight, you know, not to say that we shouldn't communicate some tomorrow if you have the capacity to add input, but more just saying, you know, where can we really see a value add, right? Where can we be the most impactful? So I think just in my opinion, like on the worst case scenario, if we aren't able to provide verbal testimony, maybe even just focusing, you know, yes, adding some points to our written testimony, but really highlighting the need to be engaged and making that a very high priority so that we're not getting information at the last minute and having to react as, you know, volunteer community members, many of, if not most of which have full-time jobs too. So just my 2 cents. Sorry, I jumped ahead, everyone.
No, thank you, Lauren. And I also did just want to note that Director Liu said that if interested, they could provide some more information about the street sweeping specifically.
Great, thanks.
Karen, do you want to go first or?
Well, just to say that I could be available tomorrow, and I say that assuming that there will be a remote connection, or does it have to be in person?
Yes, could be virtual.
So I have some flexibility, so I think I could do something useful tomorrow, I hope. And I think you're spot on, Lauren. That adding new stuff, we just haven't had the time to fully assimilate or discuss or get the data that we would need from the bureaus to really understand impacts. But I think we could just say we are concerned about the $3.1 million moving out of BES, and look forward to learning more about what the impacts of that will be. But beyond that, I think it would be fair to highlight, but I agree we don't have time to add new stuff. One thing I don't think it's adding new stuff, but in the talking points that we've put together, the part, again, back on the SDCs, I think we could cite the audit report that came out on April 23rd. And I would like to sort of just draw attention to the points that the audit report brought forward on how important ongoing regular maintenance is to intergenerational equity as well as current equity in terms of, both of those things. And I think the audit report just totally nailed it, I thought, in bringing those forward as primary concerns. So I would point to that in our talking points more concisely than that.
Thank you, Karen. Kyle Chipman, voting member. I am hard locked out tomorrow, unfortunately. 7:45 to 10:30. I really can't. There's like one I cannot reschedule. I'm making a big announcement. Same at basically 1:30 to 2:45. So I'm out of pocket. But my heart is there with Karen if you speak or whoever else speaks, of course. I do want to state, reading through the talking points again, and also coming off of this conversation, it really looks like a lot of the talking points are felt and there's good emotions without a lot of meat behind it, which is, justifiable and important. The real meat comes in at the SDC, that we object to the suspension of that metric or that point of revenue. And the reason I flagged that is just like Julia flagged Councilman Mitch Green, who is a very sharp person, like specifically cited this with some real metrics, like some numbers behind it on why he's in favor. We have the mayor working with the governor, and just that if we're going to come strong at that specific objection, that we're coming strong with like strategy and what the cost is. I'm not saying that it's not correct to voice and lift those up who are most affected, but like there's a lot of not just political momentum, but also kind of metrics-based momentum behind it. So just putting those thoughts out there, even though I'm not saying any of those words in public.
Thanks. Yeah, go ahead.
Have we collectively decided that we are oppositional to waiving the fee, the FTC fee? Because I think that would be new. I don't think that's something we've had in our previous comments.
I don't think so.
It was part of our prior
Yeah.
comments, but I think there is it's more general concern and an asking for metrics and information
see.
behind it. So you have opposed it in prior years
Yeah.
and when it rolled out. So it was more in the context of we were anticipating it as a potential, and so sharing concern about that. So at least at the prior meetings, you all had decided to proceed with that.
Well, I think that's the good way to proceed with the talking point then, is the raising the concern and wanting to see, like, having metrics around it, like really understanding that if we're going to do this, like that there's definitely a gain, you know? But I also just 100% second Karen. I like we have to really dig into why deferred maintenance should not be considered an option, you know? It's like no matter how hard the times are, we have to figure out how to get this right. To me, that's like the really, really strong leading argument, because how they do it is kind of up to them, right? But it's like, but I think that making that is, I feel like a huge priority for us. But anyway, I'm just repeating what people have said at this point, though. Thank you. Oh, and also I am similar to Kyle. Like, I went from being available to like being very not available tomorrow. I've got like major both personal and professional stuff going on tomorrow morning and into afternoon. So I'm sorry I won't be available.
Yeah, I'm thrilled to have two of you with such a small number of you to start with who might be available. So we'll take what we have, and we will try to tailor the talking points accordingly. Director Liu did indicate that they feel that some context related to the street sweeping is important because it relates to their permit compliance. So we're really close to the end of time. Director Liu, if is the context relatively brief, would you be able to provide it now, or is it something that we can come back to at the subsequent meeting and get more detail or in writing in between?
I can briefly share the background, especially since the members will be speaking about this tomorrow, just so for all of you to have the contact. This is one where one initiative have multiple benefits to the city, to the community, and also to the environment as well. So our team has done an analysis regarding street sweeping, that the $3.1 million that is the BES is paying for is related to reducing stormwater runoff and improve water quality. So that's where we are very conscious about the sewer rates connected to supporting the services we are providing. So I do want to share that contact about why that's important for us to meet our permit compliance and also reducing stormwater runoff.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Director Liu. Okay, any more comments on talking points for tomorrow?
I think I thought of a simpler way to say the point I raised earlier, and this is just my own position. Again, with the political momentum behind the suspension of that SDC, just coming very intentional with the language that we use. And I say that, and I mean, this is not meant to sound crass or blunt, but that so we don't appear to be unserious people, that we also consider the gravity of this and we understand like why you're making the decision, and we are voicing to really encourage that deferred maintenance and intergenerational equity is paramount, that don't sacrifice that at the altar of this this pursuit. But there's some real muscle behind this.
Thanks, Kyle. Lorraine?
I am just gonna say that when I am suspicious, okay? And the reason why I'm suspicious about it is because it is not focused. It is not focused. And if the goal is to, which is what the mayor ran on, to eliminate houselessness, and I may be using the wrong word, in 1 year, then I would be more open to being considerate about it. I am very suspicious about removing the SDC to benefit an open market. Basically, anyone can benefit from it. And I say that, Lorraine Wilson, voting member, I say that is how I am thinking. This is not what I'm suggesting for PUB to think, but I am very, very suspicious whether it has political clout behind it or not. And the reason why I'm so suspicious is because of the climate that we're currently in, where it seems to be focused on billionaires benefiting. There's a budget going through in DC that basically is pushing for tax breaks for billionaires again. And I am very suspicious when it is not focused. And I think by us saying that is saying, hey, we could understand why we may want to deal with this pain, but however, let's be focused about it.
Thanks, Lauren. Appreciate your input. Okay, we're running out of
We are
time.
probably starting to lose people. So I am going to just acknowledge that we do not have time to get through any of the internal stuff, but we will clearly have the priority of talking about the budget and preparing for those talking points. So that will be the focus. And I will connect with Lauren and Karen. If you have a second at the end of the meeting, let's connect. And otherwise, the rest, we will continue the conversation at the next meeting. Although I will note that we just closed our recruitment and have received, I think, 11 applications, which is more than twice the openings we have. So I consider that success in any year when we have more than vacancies we need. So I'm looking forward to doing some of the reviews with the subcommittee. So we are still seeking volunteers. We'll send information out just as a reminder, trying to lay out clearly what the time commitment will be, because we're trying to absorb as much as we can as staff and maximize the use of your time outside of meetings, and can look to when that can be scheduled in the coming month. Is there anything else from the chairs or Jonathan that I've missed from the stuff I skipped over? It's
Nothing here.
None from me.
well, thank you, everybody. Appreciate the conversation.
Have a good evening.
Take care.